Welcome to the Skeptic Zone, the podcast from Australia for science and reason.
Yes, it's the Skeptic Zone podcast, episode number 901. 901. What does that mean in numerology? I don't know. This is Richard Saunders coming to you from Sydney, Australia. And I wish I knew what the mystical meaning of 901 is. Maybe I could wish. I'll make a wish. I'll wish upon a lucky star, or as they call it these days, manifesting. Have you heard of manifesting? We've covered this on the show before, but I thought I'd take a closer look at manifesting, the claim, when it boils down to it, the claim that if you wish hard enough, things happen. I want to manifest a cup of coffee. Damn, didn't work. The Skeptic Zone cats have let me down. Where are they, by the way? I think they're outside the door. Manifesting. When you wish upon a star, well, wouldn't it be interesting if we could just wish for things in our life to come true and they came true? What happens if two different people wish for two different things? Which one wins, I wonder? Manifesting coming up at the top of the show. Following that, it's Woo Watch, or Woo of the Week with Kate Thomas. And Kate will be looking at the far-fetched claims made for magnesium. An important product, no doubt, but does it live up to all the hype? Then we look at the blog post over at Losing the Lucky Country, link in this week's show notes, where Paul Gallagher looks at what the questioner the other month at Skeptics in the Pub was saying about vaccines and so on. Now, she has since apologized for her outburst. Nevertheless, an outburst it was. Now, I'll play a little clip of that outburst a bit later in the show, but Losing the Lucky Country, where Paul Gallagher looks at the claims. Then to round off the show in the Trove segment, we're going to be looking at an article from a New Age magazine published in 1993, Southern Crossings. And this article is about dowsing or divining and includes what in the mind of the writer was a simple test. How good is this test? Find out later in the show. Now, for those of you in Australia, I don't have to tell you, the last few days have been warm. When I say warm, last evening here in Sydney, it was over 40 degrees, over 100 degrees in the Fahrenheit scale. It was horrible. It was just terrible heat. And luckily, a cool change came in the late evening, and today is not so bad. But we had people frying eggs on the sidewalk, the pavement, the footpath, or spending the days in shopping malls or anything to escape the terrible heat. And, of course, the last week, when we look internationally, saw that terrible shooting in Minneapolis. And it's worth noting that I've discovered online at least one so-called psychic who say they have made contact with that deceased woman. Keep it classy, psychics. In fact, why not? Let's out this person. The account on TikTok is called Cindy and Mike. It's a little hard to understand what she's saying. I think she says she is from Rowan Tree Groves. Anyway, here's one of her TikToks.
Hi, this is Cindy from Rowan Tree Groves. I did a peek. I looked for Renee Good to see where she was after her sudden death. And what I saw, I was worried would concern all of you and be confusing, but sudden death can be confusing. It's almost mind-numbing for the person who passes away. It kind of stops them in their tracks for a little while until they can really embrace what's happened and where they are. So when I saw Renee, she was standing next to a woman. The woman didn't look old from behind. I can only see them from behind.
I think that's enough of that. Yes, I'm just looking at the account here at Rowan Tree Groves. In other postings, she claims to contact people like Martin Luther King Jr. And Elvis Presley. Rob Reiner, John Candy, Chris Farley, Luke Perry, Michael Landon, Charlie Kirk, the artist formerly known as Prince, Extraterrestrials, Pope Francis, Karen Carpenter, Ted Bundy, Jeffrey Dahmer, these people were murderers, Albert Einstein, Diane Keaton, and I'll just have to stop now because it's getting ridiculous, Harry Houdini. Well, she claims she takes a peek at these people. I'm sure they are delighted to be peeked at in the afterlife. So, no matter where you are, I hope in Australia at least that you were able to do okay during these hot days. People have lost their houses in bushfires, forest fires, which is a terrible thing. And I know there are people who had problems with smoke coming over their house from fires, which is very disconcerting. I've been in that situation many years ago where there were fires very close and the house was filled with smoke. It's not good at all. But now it's time for me to run downstairs and have a nice cool glass of ice water after all these hot days. While I do that, I hope you enjoy the Skeptic Zone. Manifesting. Have you heard of manifesting? Do you manifest things every morning? Maybe you'd like to manifest your breakfast, a nice cup of coffee. I want a nice cup of coffee. Think. Manifesting has become a popular name for the long-standing idea that has been woven through the law of attraction, New Thought, The Secret, and the power of positive thinking. Each generation likes to think that they've found the key to unlocking all of your desires, money, love, etc. When, in actuality, it's the same false hope that has been passed down for many generations. Recently on the Skeptic Zone, you would have heard reporter Kat McLeod talking about the lucky girl syndrome. By whatever name, it is the personification of wishful thinking. Let's turn to that bastion of all knowledge, TikTok, to see what people are saying about manifesting.
If you want to manifest something instantly, literally instantly, overnight, immediately, you need to do this emergency manifestation technique. It is literally called the SIP method. SIP. Like a sip of a drink. All you need is a drink. That's all you need. That's it. So grab a drink, coffee, water, pop, soda, whatever you want, tea, and just keep it in front of you. Close your eyes, and you completely clear your mind of everything except for what it is that you want to manifest.
So there's you, the fractal of you, and then there's the higher self, which is overseeing this one lifetime. And then beyond that is the oversoul. And the oversoul is guiding the entire arc of your soul's existence and mission. Most people are trying to create and manifest from either the human fractal or the higher self, which means that you are essentially cutting yourself off from the highest levels of magic and alignment that are actually available to you.
So I just want you to relax and close your eyes, and I want you to think about what it is you want to create. You see it as already accomplished. It's already done. You see it in detail.
The universe is listening to everything you say and everything you think and saying, okay, you can get that. So then it starts to bring you in and bring things into you. And I know this sounds far-fetched, but it's amazing how it works. If you do a good general positive statement for yourself, the universe will figure out how to manifest that.
I will tell you a secret. You all manifest instantly. Instantly. Every moment. Instantly. The only reason many of you don't know that you're manifesting every single moment instantly is because the degree of difference between one manifestation and another isn't always very large.
The CIA has released a meditation method that is proven to work when it comes to manifesting. I've actually used this method multiple times myself, and let me tell you, it works, and it works super fast. So the CIA released something called Hemisync, and Hemisync is pretty much where you are going to be listening to a 4 to 7 hertz frequency. You can find them on YouTube. I listen to specific ones. I'm more than happy to share them with you guys. You're going to listen to this frequency, and when you are listening to this frequency, what it's doing is shutting down the left side of your brain, which is the logical side of your brain, and pretty much making your right side of your brain more open and receptible, where this is where your subconscious is, more open and receptible to receiving new information. And if you do not know, in manifesting, your subconscious is honestly the key, the foundation to having your manifestations come into reality so much quicker.
If you want proof that manifestation is real, if you want proof that the universe is always listening and responding to you, you need to watch this video. I'm going to teach you a game that I want you to play with the universe in the next 24 hours. And I want you to comment below what happens when you play this game. So to play this game, all you need to do is say this out loud. Universe, I want you to show me that you're listening. I want you to show me that I am a powerful manifester. I want you to show me that you have my back.
How to shift your vibration level to raise your energy. So we've talked about this before, that your vibration level is what attracts abundance or does not attract abundance. So once you learn to vibrate correctly, your entire life shifts. The law of attraction is real. It's not magic. It's not about thinking positively and hoping for the best. It's all about your vibration.
Manifesting in the New Age spiritual realms refers to the idea that one can intentionally bring desired outcomes or objects, money for example, into reality by focusing your thoughts, emotions, or intentions on them. Proponents commonly link manifesting to the law of attraction, which was popular about a decade ago or so, which holds that positive thoughts emit a certain energy that attracts positive outcomes, and negative thoughts, supposedly, would attract negative outcomes. In other words, by visualizing a goal, money, usually, and feeling like it's already been achieved, believers assert that the universe will respond and align reality to meet your expectations. Now, bear in mind that there can be positive outcomes in this way of thinking, and we'll get to that later. Manifesting is often regarded as a mental or spiritual practice, bringing something into being through focused thought. It's aligned with the concepts of positive affirmations, creative visualization, and intention setting. It also presupposes that the universe hears you and responds to you directly. There is no evidence to support this premise. Now, the idea of manifestation has its roots in metaphysical and New Thought movements of the 19th and 20th century. New Thought, also called Mind Cure or Higher Thought, was a U.S. spiritual movement founded on the conviction that the mind and consciousness are deeply linked to life events. New Thought teachings held that a person's mental state could shape reality. In the 19th century, people like Phineas Parkhurst Quimby pioneered this mind cure idea. Quimby believed that illness and hardship stemmed from erroneous beliefs in the mind, and that by correcting those thoughts, one could heal the body. Mary Baker Eddy, founder of Christian Science, was briefly influenced by Quimby's mind-healing ideas, illustrating how these metaphysical views spread in the era. By the late 1800s and into the early 1900s, New Thought writers explicitly formulated what became the law of attraction, teaching that focused thought and belief could attract wealth. Then shortly into the new century, into the 2000s, the idea became very popular with Rhonda Byrne's The Secret, 2006, which repackaged the New Thought ideas for a mass audience. And soon manifesting became a widely known New Age concept once again. But as we said before, although the idea of wishing something and having that wish come true is absurd just on its own, the idea of manifesting and the action one takes can initiate change. Let's look at some of the techniques people use to manifest. Advocates of manifesting use a variety of concrete methods and rituals to focus attention on their goals. One widely used tool is the vision board, or sometimes called a mood board, a poster or collage of images and words that represent the things a person wishes to attract. For example, they may have pictures of their next dream house or where they would like to take their next holiday. Probably, I would suspect, they would have pictures of money, dollar notes or something like that, and possibly an image of the person they personally would wish to attract. And we'll think more about that later. The idea that placing the vision board somewhere visible, such as the bedroom or office, provides a constant visual reminder of one's intentions, one's goals, keeping them in mind and fueling motivation. So from that point of view, the act of putting things that you wish to achieve up on a board and being reminded about them constantly can focus the mind and can bring about change. We also have affirmations, repeating positive statements about oneself or one's goals. For example, I am successful, money will flow my way, I will be creative today, or visualizing what you would wish to happen, mentally picturing a desired outcome in vivid detail. Also, making a journal about one's goals, which is a common practice. All these can help focus the mind and bring about real change. Now, none of these things are, if I may use the term, a secret. Setting yourself goals, being motivated, being reminded of your goals, thinking positively about your goals will, no doubt, aid you in achieving or trying to achieve or hopefully achieving your goals. From a scientific point of view, however, manifesting and the law of attraction is regarded as pseudoscience. No rigorous evidence shows that merely thinking about a goal can directly cause external events to occur. In fact, researchers warn that the concept rests on unfounded assumptions. Again, the universe is probably not listening to what you have to say, especially if you just think it. Psychiatrist Neil Farber writes the law of attraction is, quote, metaphysical pseudoscience, with conclusions based on erroneous, unfounded, and incorrect assumptions, end quote. This kind of magical thinking, treating thoughts as if they physically attract outcomes, has no basis in actual physics or psychology. It also must be pointed out that it tends to blame individuals for negative thoughts, implying that they didn't get their outcomes because they did not think hard enough about them. They did not wish enough. Manifesting also relies heavily on confirmation bias, in which positive outcomes, no matter what they are, will often be interpreted as success for positive thought. Now we get back to what we were saying earlier about when we were talking about the visualization board. Do I have one here? No, I've got a bookshelf full of books by James Randi. Maybe that'll have to do the trick. Among the pictures of a dream holiday location or pictures of money, one could have a picture of somebody one wishes to win, attract in life. That's all very well. But what if that person is not interested? It gets back to wishing. I wish for this, I wish for that. And the classic tales we hear about people wishing that somebody they're attracted to would love them suddenly. Well, that is a horrible thought, that you could simply wish somebody's mind to a different pattern in that respect. And life doesn't work that way. So to briefly summarize, wishing for something to happen doesn't work. When you wish upon a star, maybe something will happen, maybe it won't. The act of wishing in itself has no bearing on what will happen to you, but wishing and acting upon that wish in a positive manner can bring results. Your visualization board can remind you to do what you need to do to achieve your goals. It's an aid. It's a help. It does not necessarily mean it will work, but I think you've got a better shot if you think positively, keep your goals in mind, and act upon them. This has nothing to do with some mystical intelligence in the universe, but what this whole idea of manifesting has done was certainly recently has just led a lot of people to believe that magical thinking is real, and if they wish for something hard enough, they can make that thing happen. If we were all given wishes, the world would fall apart very quickly, I think. But maybe I should leave you with a short clip here on TikTok by one Ken Coleman discussing manifestation.
One of the hot phrases now is manifesting. Manifesting is the idea that through the power of belief, we can effectively think a goal into becoming reality. Now, I'm glad you're laughing because I'm literally
sorry, but there's part of me that looks at that and goes
it's
like,
a hoax. That's now, I'll go out there. I think it's a hoax because I think it's just buffoonery.
Yeah, that just sounds like some sort of like TikTok psychosis to me. I don't know, like, you know, like some preternaturally attractive person with a wide brimmed hat is selling that out there.
And it's celebrities. That's where it's blowing up on TikTok and Instagram. And it's become a thing. And I bring it up because I see well-meaning people.
Yeah. It's not my thing. I'm not here to judge anybody else's thing, right? But I just
based on that definition.
Awesome. Flights to Bali for half price. You got to ask yourself, why only you right now through this random agent? It's a scam. Fake travel sites. You pay in full, booking never existed, they keep your money. How it works. Last seats deal via ads or WhatsApp. Site mimics real brands. They require full payment via bank transfer. Week later, no booking, no holiday. Agent unreachable. Horrible. What makes you vulnerable? Scarcity, last seats, loss aversion. Don't want to miss the perfect trip. Confirmation bias. You want it to be true, so you ignore all the red flags. How to avoid it? Cross-check on the airline's official site. Confirm booking directly before paying balance. Credit cards only, not bank transfers, not ever. To learn more, listen to the latest Why Smart Women podcast. Otherwise, have a safe, scam-free 2026.
With all the weird, wacky woo that's worth watching, it's Woo Watch with Kate Thomas.
Friends, you know I curate each Instagram reel and TikTok the way one might curate a cathedral, stone by stone, arched with evidence, supported by peer review and designed to withstand the centuries. But at the end, when the incense clears and the choir has gone home, I like to wander out the back, kick over a few misunderstood factoids, drag them into the alley behind the wellness centre and set them alight to create my dumpster bin fire segment Woo of the Week, where we lovingly take a very ordinary thing and gently escort it back down off the wellness pulpit it absolutely does not deserve to be preaching from. This week's Woo is a simple mineral that somehow developed delusions of grandeur. Magnesium is a supplement that has somehow been marketed as the solution to anxiety, insomnia, migraines, constipation, ADHD, menopause, burnout, and the general horror of being alive in late capitalism. Let's do this properly, shall we? What magnesium actually is and what it isn't. Magnesium is an essential mineral. It's not a hormone. It's not a neurotransmitter. It's not a nervous system reset. Its role is quietly important and deeply unsexy. Magnesium acts as a cofactor in hundreds of enzyme reactions, energy production, muscle contraction, nerve conduction, heart rhythm, bone health. Magnesium doesn't do things on its own. It helps other things work. Magnesium is not a sedative, a treatment for anxiety disorders, or a trauma intervention. If magnesium fixed all that, psychiatry would be a bulk buy aisle. Why is magnesium so wildly oversold? Magnesium is the perfect wellness supplement. It's real, it's generally safe, it's deficiency adjacent, and most people don't understand dose or delivery. So low magnesium becomes the explanation for everything modern life breaks. Tired? Magnesium. Stressed? Magnesium. Can't sleep? Magnesium. Burnt out? Magnesium. That's not physiology. That's marketing. And by the way, can whoever does the marketing for magnesium give me a ring? True magnesium deficiency is uncommon in healthy people. You are more at risk if you have chronic gut disease, malabsorption, alcohol dependence, long-term diuretics or PPIs, or poor nutrition. Most people with fatigue and anxiety are not magnesium deficient, they're overstimulated and underslept. Magnesium can't fix that. Where magnesium actually has evidence, and let's be fair to poor old magnesium, constipation, yes. Magnesium citrate and oxide work by pulling water into the bowel. They are effective. They will make you poop. Migraines, modest benefit, some evidence, particularly intravenous magnesium in acute migraine. Oral magnesium may help prevent migraines in some people. Leg cramps, small benefit, low risk, reasonable. True deficiency replacement, boring, correct, useful medicine. Sleep and anxiety is where the claims get slippery. Magnesium may help some people with mild sleep disturbance, muscle tension, and occasionally restless legs. But the effects are small and the studies are mixed, and a lot of the benefit comes from taking something at night and slowing down. If magnesium has changed your life, one of three things has probably happened. You were deficient, it's fixed your constipation, or you've accidentally started a bedtime routine. Why magnesium creams, sprays, and patches don't work? This is important. Magnesium is a charged mineral, and your skin's primary job is to keep the insides in and the outsides out. The skin barrier, the stratum corneum, is very good at stopping ions like magnesium from passing through in any meaningful amount. There is no good evidence that magnesium sprays, creams, oils, or patches raise blood magnesium levels. Any tingling people feel is skin irritation and not absorption. If transdermal magnesium worked, hospitals would use it, and they don't. We give magnesium orally or intravenously because that's how human physiology works. Different magnesium salts exist, and they do have different personalities. Citrate and oxide are cheap and poorly absorbed. Glycinate is fine, gentle, not magic, and threonate has big brain claims, weak human data, and very expensive. And as we've just discovered, sprays, patches, they're all marketing. Safety, because it's still a drug, and if it has an effect, then it can also have a side effect. Magnesium can cause diarrhea, electrolyte disturbances, and problems in kidney disease. More is not better. Stacking supplements is not harmless. Natural does not mean risk-free. Prescribe or pass. Magnesium gets a conditional prescribe, useful for constipation, reasonable for migraines, appropriate when deficiency exists, useful if you want to stabilize a few cell membranes. Not nervous system medicine, not hormone therapy, not absorbed through your skin. To wrap up, magnesium is a helpful mineral. It's not therapy, it's not a diagnosis, and it will not fix a life that needs rest, boundaries, or structural support. Woo of the week, done. You can find me on TikTok and Instagram at Prescribe or Pass. See you next time for more woo.
This is Ben Radford
and Celestia Ward,
coming to you on the Skeptic Zone podcast, one of our favorite skeptical shows.
Back on our podcast, Squaring the Strange, we cover topics like cryptids, ghost stories, and other mysterious phenomena.
If you like tales of the strange and unraveling them to find out the origins, the psychology, and the allure of the weird, well, you might like Squaring the Strange.
New episodes drop twice a month, and our backlog includes folklore, true crime mysteries, psychics, superstitions, conspiracies, panics, urban legends, and more.
Find us on all the popular podcast feeds, and if you like us, subscribe.
No, subscribe first and download like 200 episodes. Then decide later if you like us.
Yeah, either way.
Now, a couple of weeks ago, you would have heard the Why Smart Women Zone live podcast, as recorded at the Occidental Hotel here in Sydney with Annie McCubbin, myself as hosts, MC was Lara Benham, and the guests were Kate Thomas, and we had Sue Ieraci and Jessica Singer. Now, at the end of that recording, the Q&A section of the night was hijacked in a way by somebody who has a very strong point of view, an anti-vaxxer or an anti-specific vaccine. It's hard to pin down exactly. Her name is Alison Bevege, Bevege, a former journalist for various outlets. Currently, I guess you'd say an independent journalist. And she apparently was recording too. And I've discovered another instance where she was in the audience of a TV show about vaccines and she was recording behind the scenes too. Anyway, whatever. I think people can come along and record things if they like. However, you would have heard her. If you didn't, here is a brief recap.
Make sure that you crush out the other side. You never examine your assumptions. Did you ever examine your assumptions? Did you ever read RFK's book?
Yes, we did.
Did you ever? Or do you just sit there and say nothing? I know people who died because of that vaccine. A lot of people died because of the mRNA and DNA genetic vaccines that were repurposed genetic therapies, if you bothered to research it, which you obviously haven't.
Yes, I have. You're wrong. It's all right.
Now, Alison appeared at the very next Skeptics in the Pub, only the other day, somewhat more subdued, but she is firmly of the mindset that we are not the real skeptics, etc. And she has a real thing about the mRNA vaccine. Our friend Paul Gallagher at the Losing the Lucky Country blog, link in this week's show notes, wrote about the points that she made during the live recording of the Why Smart Women Zone. And I will cover just a few of them here, and I'll leave it up to you to, if you wish to have a look at the rest. Published on the 31st of December 2025, Refuting the Anti-Vaxxer Who Yelled Her Way onto the Skeptic Zone. Back on 7 December, the Skeptic Zone and Why Smart Women podcasts blended to present a unique live episode at the Occidental Hotel in Sydney, billed as the Why Smart Women Zone podcast. The show featured Why Smart Women host Annie McCubbin with Sue Ieraci, Kate Thomas, Jessica Singer, and Richard Saunders. Lara Benham was MC. And there's a link there to the video. And of course, if you go to the Skeptic Zone video page on YouTube, you'll see that video too. Some of the points covered here in the blog is the fact that Alison was screaming at us that we are not the real skeptics, we're a disgrace to skepticism and so on. And Paul writes here, in fact, 13 years ago I wrote, Skepgoating, Why Anti-Vaxxers Need to Devalue Skepticism. The notion of belittling skeptics this way peaked for a time with all the lethality of wet cabbage. Ordered to change their misleading name in February 2014, the Australian Vaccination Network initially chose the Australian Vaccination Skeptics Network before swapping skeptics for risks. And I think the point here is that people with a very certain axe to grind or a very strong point of view and this has happened before, the modern skeptical movement has been accused of not being the true skeptics by people like moon landing deniers, flat earthers, this sort of thing, because they think they're the real skeptics because they're bucking the consensus and, you know, they have the real truth and all the rest of us aren't real skeptics. Sort of misses the point a little bit. I guess the analogy is, as I said to her, skeptics base broadly their opinion on the consensus of experts in the particular field, in the particular scientific field. So I'm no vaccine expert, but I will base my thoughts and opinions on the conclusions and the consensus of experts in that particular field. So the analogy would be, why isn't she, or why aren't other people flat earthers, for example? Why? Because I base my thoughts and opinions on the shape of the planet on the consensus of the experts in that scientific field. And the consensus is overwhelmingly the Earth is round. The consensus of experts in immunology is that vaccines are safe and effective. Generally speaking, that is the consensus of opinion. Once that consensus is overturned, or if it is overturned or modified, then we need to adjust our thinking. I mean, some of the things that she said in her tirade were, why are you so self-satisfied? Why do you call other people cookers? Why do you deplatform people? This is not science. You are a shame on skepticism. You're not real skeptics. You don't want to... She said, I don't want to be called a cooker by people like you. You're a bloody disgrace to skepticism. Did you ever read RFK's book? This woman, Alison, was gish galloping. That there's just too many things being thrown at you to possibly refute or respond to. Events and names, and what about this person who did this, and this is in this book, and you can't refute all those on the spot. And she said she once worked for the Daily Mail, which is probably correct, but she wrongly claimed an editor had urged reporters to make anti-vaxxers sound crazy, and that was caught on a video. Indeed, there is a link to that video. The video has been uncovered on the data mining disinformation site Natural News, which is really all one needs to know about whether the editor did the right thing. This was in July 2021 when the vaccines were indeed saving lives and badly needed. Anti-vax rhetoric was then dangerous conspiratorial nonsense, pushed by trolls filling comment sections of news publications. And he goes on to say here, the woman said she herself also once thought anti-vaxxers were crazy. In fact, in the video, the editor describes them as intelligent, otherwise well-educated people. He added, if we were doing something that's airing anti-vax views, make sure we're also dismissing them. Is that the right way to put it? He asked somebody off camera. Make sure we're rubbishing their ridiculous claims. And Paul says, I completely condone his advice. He criticizes the anti-vax claims, but not the person making those claims. He never suggested a journalist should make anyone sound crazy. And, of course, it was right and proper to rubbish the bizarre and ridiculous claims of the anti-vaxxers at the time. And I wrote a press release once listing many of their insane, unbelievable claims, like COVID-19 was just a bad cold and microchips were in vaccines and so on. Now, Paul goes on here a lot about the mRNA vaccine. And Paul says, at one point the woman promoted Emeritus Professor Robert Clancy, referring to his book on the subject. In fact, he was the primary editor and contributor. Other contributors are anti-vaxxers Marianne Damasey and John Campbell. Damasey's work has long attracted criticism, including her 2016 suspension following an internal review into Catalyst at the ABC. And that's another story. And another claim that which we can't corroborate is that she went up to Machu Picchu with Richard Dawkins and Lawrence Krauss within the last years before the pandemic. So whether she did or not, I don't know. She also said that she corresponded with Robert T. Carroll of the Skeptics Dictionary in the 90s. That's neither here nor there. Now, again, I won't read out the whole blog. It's quite lengthy, but it's an interesting thing to read. But I will cover this term cooker because it's even a relatively new term for me, but it's only been around for a few years. And according to Google, cooker, in Australian slang, it's a derogatory term for a conspiracy theorist or someone into the anti-vax/lockdown ideas. Origin, derived from cooked, meaning crazy or unhinged. Anyway, at the end of the day, we did, as you will know, you would have heard, if you listened a few episodes ago, we did broadcast her full rant at the Skeptics there, which didn't give her then the opportunity to put up somewhere. I've been edited out, but I made this recording and now you can find out the truth, sort of fun and games. Now, as I said before, I'm no expert on vaccinations. I'm not. I've been dealing with the anti-vaxxers for a long time. It's not up for me to, on the spot, refute all the arguments they come out with, especially when they gish gallop. It's up to experts in the field, as it should be. And that's why there are certainly times where it's simply futile to try and debate these people. Again, I recommend you have a look at the blog Losing Lucky Country by Paul Gallagher, which goes into this subject in a lot more detail.
Hi, I'm Leslie Rosenblood, host of Podcast for Inquiry, the official podcast of the Centre for Inquiry Canada. Every 2 weeks, I bring you a conversation with an expert on some complex subject, which we discuss with intelligence and nuance. The goal is that you come away with more than just a surface-level understanding, as well as an appreciation for a genuine spirit of inquiry. If your intellectual curiosity extends to science, religion, philosophy, economics, humanism, politics, and more, subscribe to Podcast for Inquiry today, available anywhere you get your podcasts. A video form is also available on YouTube on the Centre for Inquiry Canada's channel. I look forward to welcoming you to the inquiring community.
Now it's time once again to go back to those archives from around the world, digital archives of newspapers, magazines, and so on, in the segment we call Trove, because normally we end up at trove.nla.gov.au, a wonderful resource of thousands of newspapers. But I thought I would look, and we've looked at this magazine before. This is something I picked up in a second-hand store, I don't know, within the last 10 years. And it's an old copy of a magazine, long since gone, called Southern Crossings, Australia's own magazine of the New Age. And this is from September-October 1993. Price $2.95. And whereas before I read out some of the more interesting advertisements here for various New Age services and products and whatnot, including things like Reiki, it says here. Reiki is an ancient Tibetan science, of accessing pure life force energy, healing at all levels. Well, that's all you really need to say, isn't it? And it goes on, someone calling themselves a Reiki master, even back in 1993. Or indeed, you could go on a spiritual development course. 7-week course begins, Roselle, which is here in Sydney, Wednesday, the 22nd of September, 7:30 p.m. And French's Forest, also in Sydney, on the 23rd of September, where you can learn channeled healing, auras and chakra healing. Isn't it interesting how chakras are so pathetic, unstable, that they always need rebalancing or unblocking? What the hell? That's worse than an appendix. Well, even appendix does something. Crystals, spirit guides, again with the spirit guides, dream interpretation, past life therapy, shamanic healing. Maybe that should be shambolic healing. Cost $15 per night. Or you could attend a lecture. Lectures that will change the way you think about life. Reincarnation. Why, where, and how we have lived before. Karmic laws behind disease and rebirth. And the seminar, The Techniques of Astral Projection, by world-renowned lecturer from England, Dr. Douglas Baker, B.A. M.R.C.S. L.R.C.P. And quickly one more before I get onto the article. Gaia, Natural Healthcare, Suite 108, 247 Pacific Highway, North Sydney. It's probably long since gone. Revolutionary new way of looking at your health. It is now possible using the latest technology, in 1993, to view the balance of your body energy on a computer screen. Well, let's all go back to 1993 and get a computer screen analysis. And the photograph here is a couple of smiling women, and one is holding a probe of some description. The other woman is holding the other probe in her other hand. They're both beaming away, and on the computer is a sort of a graph. So there you go, it must be true. Nevertheless, let's have a look at one of the articles here, and this is by Ray Thiele, ND, and remember, ND stands for not a doctor, DDMH RT, DDMH. And I'm not sure what that is, so quick search comes up with DDMH can refer to developmental disabilities mental health. In business, DDMH Worldwide is a global market research and consulting firm. Not sure what that is, never mind. The art of dowsing. The phenomena of dowsing is indeed ancient. The Egyptians certainly knew of it, but one of the first European writings on the subject appeared in 1639, when an Englishman named Gabriel Platz published a discourse on, quote, a discovery of subterranean treasure, end quote, in which he stated, the operation of the vigula divina, divining rod, is thus to be performed. I cut a rod of hazel, and in commas hazel. I tied it to my staff in the middle with a strong thread so that it might hang even, and carried it up and down the mountains, and it guided me to a vein of lead ore. Throughout the ages, dowsing has always been considered mysterious and magical, with no rational explanation for its results. And we now know why it works, but that's for another time. The seemingly uncontrolled movements of the dowsing rod, pendulum, or other instrument have been attributed to either God or the devil, depending on the mood of the times and those practicing it. The devil? The devil uses divining rods? Okay, why not? From the mid-17th century upwards, dowsing was popular throughout Britain and Europe, with some of the most notable dowsers being the clergy. A French priest named Abbé Mert was known all over Europe in the early to mid-1900s as the King of Dowsers, the pendulums being his preferred dowsing instrument. He was consulted by people worldwide for help and guidance, including the Pope, who took great interest in his work. And he goes on there with other information, but let's have a look at what he suggests to be an experiment. He says each of us has a natural polarity. This simply means that our body is a magnet with positive and negative side. Do not cross your hands, arms, or feet while working with the pendulum, as this can neutralize the current. I have had neutralized currents once. I think it was a cake I had. It is important to understand that there are no hard and fast rules for polarity, any more than there is any such animal as an average person. Generally speaking, a male would tend to be right-hand positive and left-hand negative, while a female would tend to be the reverse. However, these are not infallible rules, so as you become proficient with the pendulum, you must allow for variations. Pendulum movements are many and varied. There are literally dozens of possible directions that the pendulum can move in, but For the moment, we will consider only the 3 illustrated below: clockwise, anti-clockwise, back and forth in a straight line. Now here comes the experiment. Choose a small weight to act as a pendulum, a ring, metal washer, or similar. Tie a piece of cotton thread about 30 centimeters to the weight such that when the thread is held in your dominant hand, i.e. whether you are left or right-handed, the weight will hang freely downward. Sit at a table with your back to the north, known as the magnetic position. Suspend the pendulum and lengthen or shorten it until it begins to move of its own accord. This is known as tuning the pendulum, and this is known as the first of many delusions when it comes to this. Of course, it is not moving of its own accord. It moves through the slight and amplified movements of the hand, known as the ideomotor effect. Anyway, for this experiment, we will use a torch battery, D size preferably, as it has a positive and negative pole similar to a magnet. On a normal torch battery, the positive plus pole is the end that has a small protrusion sticking up, with the flat end being the negative pole. Stand the battery so the positive pole is at the top and suspend your pendulum above it. The pendulum will gyrate in a clockwise or anti-clockwise direction. Remember this direction. Now balance the battery so the negative pole is uppermost and repeat the experiment. The pendulum will gyrate in the opposite direction. And then he goes on to talk about simple food testing and other advice about using the pendulum. Of course, this is no experiment, this is no test, this is simply adding delusion on delusion, reinforcing what you think is happening. Of course, the real test would be to have the pendulum over a magnet, or I should say a battery, where you didn't know if it was the plus or the minus sticking up. I mean, typically, if somebody came to the Australian Skeptics and say they wanted to test their powers of pendulums in a similar manner, we might have, 10 or 20 batteries lined up under a little covering, so nobody would know whether the positive or the negative side was sticking up on any particular battery, and ask them to move along and tell us which one is positive and which one is negative. And we would do that until we had a good statistical outcome one way or the other. He goes on later to say, using the pendulum, some useful things here. He says, allow the pendulum to work itself. Don't meddle. Calmly direct your attention to the pendulum and away from your hands. Relax physically and mentally and observe what happens. Keep your mind focused and avoid jumping to obvious conclusions. Strive for a form of mental balance whereby you hold the pendulum steady, yet able to react to any influence. Reliable results require mental and physical balance through a kind of optimistic relaxation. Errors can be directly attributed to your mental attitude. There you are, it's all your fault. If your mind wanders or you are too eager or impatient, then your final results will be disappointing. There we are, we have an excuse already. Finally, practice, and more practice means that your results will become steadily more reliable. And all that was an extract from a book, in fact, called The Art of Radiesthesia. Radiesthesia, dowsing and radionics. And radiesthesia is a word I had not heard before. According to Google, the purported ability to detect subtle energy fields or radiations from living beings, objects, or the earth. And this book or this publication, a new home study course, it's a course, that consists of over 200 pages of detailed notes in 10 lessons, including concise step-by-step practical instruction with diagrams, complete plans with drawings for making angled rods, dowsing rods, spring rods, and radionic diagnosis treatment instruments. And it goes on with all sorts of wonderful things, and is published by the Academy of Natural Therapies, 23 Taree Street, West Burleigh, Queensland. I wonder if there's anything like that still around. The Academy of Natural Therapies. And the latest information here says the Academy of Natural Therapies is located in Southport, not West Burleigh. So it might have moved or it might be a new business. And this one seems to be offering massage therapy and other natural therapies. And a quick Google search on the name of that course, which would be interesting to look at, reveals nothing. Oh, this was a long time ago. Well, there we are. We did find some wisdom from the past. Anything is wisdom from the past if we learn from it. And we do, even though this is nonsense, the art of dowsing and using the pendulum. We know it's nonsense, but we know why it works. We still learn something when we go back and have a look and research these matters. And as these cicadas outside the window all start to sing in unison, maybe they were inspired by the dowsing, I will leave you with one last little advertisement in this issue of Southern Crossings, all the way back there in 1993. Australia's own Solar Fire, a new astrological software package for Windows on IBM compatible computers. A professional package, visual and easy to use, developed in Australia by an FAA qualified astrologer and professional software consultant. What could go wrong? Information and orders, phone or fax 08 331 3057. Esoteric Technologies Proprietary Limited, PO Box 159, Stepney, South Australia 5069. Now, the successors to this magazine I used to collect in the early part of the 2000s. They were called Omni, I think, or something like that. And you know what? I'm looking around my library here, and I don't know if I've kept any copies of those, which I really should have. I think they were available online, so I might dig into those, and it might make for an interesting session coming up. So we would be looking roughly 20 years ago at various New Age ads and bits and pieces. But one of the lessons here, of course, is the claim is divining and dowsing is hundreds, if not thousands of years old, which is probably correct. But year after year, decade after decade, century after century, it remains unproven, which is a pretty good indication that such a phenomenon does not exist except in the mind of the dowser or diviner. Thank you for listening to the Skeptic Zone podcast, and thank you to those people who continue to support the show on Patreon or PayPal at skepticzone.tv. As I mentioned a few weeks ago, I'm using a new studio microphone now, the Rode Procaster, and so far so good. Very happy with that. And that was due to the generosity of a listener and the generosity of all listeners who subscribe with PayPal or Patreon. Thank you. And just getting back to that earlier segment, losing the lucky country, it reminds me that it can be very frustrating. You think you know topics well, reasonably well. Even hardened skeptics tend to be very wary about debating believers. I think Bill Nye did it about 10 years ago. He debated, was it Ken Ham or somebody like that, about creationism. It can be a minefield because it gives the other side unearned credibility by appearing on the stage with somebody like Bill Nye in that situation. And it can be a very difficult exercise, mainly due to gish galloping, where the opponent will simply bombard you with information which you cannot process or refute on the spot. And gish galloping, of course, is a term invented by my friend Eugenie Scott. Hello, Jeannie. I hope it's nice weather in Berkeley. Anyway, I wonder what you think about that. Would you like to stand up and debate an anti-vaxxer, for example, how do you think you would go? Coming up on next week's show, we're going to be looking at more predictions as posted over at Mamma Mia, a popular website here in Australia but mostly aimed at women, I think. We might have another look at talking about dead people, Nostradamus. I wonder what predictions he made for 2026. I did find an interesting article about Nostradamus in only the last couple of days when I was doing research, so maybe we'll look at that. And a lot of younger people these days would not have heard of Nostradamus. It's more of a thing from the last century, I think. And, well, I don't know what else is coming up on next week's show. Maybe I can manifest something. But for this week, this is Richard Saunders signing off from Sydney, Australia.
You've been listening to the Skeptic Zone podcast. Please visit our website at www.skepticzone.tv for episodes and show notes with links going back to 2008. You can follow the Skeptic Zone on Facebook, X, TikTok and YouTube by clicking the links at our homepage, together with links to support the show financially via Patreon or PayPal. The Skeptic Zone is an independent production. The views and opinions expressed by our guests are not necessarily those of the Skeptic Zone podcast or any other skeptical organisation.
Hello to those people who listen after the music. Yes, it's time for the dice game. I have a 10-sided die here and a dice rolling contraption given to me by my friend Greg Doré in the Bay Area some years ago. I wonder when that was, some years ago. Anyway, this is where I roll a die, a D10. I'm going to roll it 4 times. Why? Because. And we'll all use our psychic, mystical, magical powers to predict which number comes up. And I will predict in advance. I will predict 5 for Susan Gerbeck. I will predict 4 for the skeptical fairy godmother angel from the internet. I will predict 2 for Eugenie Scott. Hello, Jeannie. And her granddaughter. And then finally, I will predict 8 for everybody else. Here we go. Roll number 1. I've predicted 5, and the die says 1. Roll number 2. I've predicted 4, and the die says 4. I must have manifested that. Surely there can be no other explanation. Roll number 3. I have predicted 2 and 8. Well, I did predict 8 for the next roll. So maybe, well, that's how psychic I am, you see. So I predicted the next roll successfully. Finally, I've predicted 8 for the last roll, and the die says 6. Well, I'm going to give myself 1 point because I got 4 correct, and I'm going to give myself half a point because I had predicted an 8 1 roll before the 8. There you are. That's not cheating at all.